I can't recall a single point during my childhood when I wasn't subtly shown that I was always second best. It never happened in any overt way. There was never a big discussion where anyone sat me down and explained it. Instead, it unfolded gradually, in soft and steady increments. It was a constant stream of barely noticeable cues, countless little requests, quick looks, and minor choices that quietly communicated the same message. My younger sister, Megan Quinn, always seemed to need something extra. Extra care, extra sympathy, extra pardons, and I was the one expected to provide it all. Anytime Megan damaged something that belonged to me, my mother, Linda Martin, would just glance at me and let out a resigned breath. "She's younger, Kate. Please try to let it pass." If Megan had a tantrum about a toy I was playing with, my mother wouldn't reprimand her. Instead, she would turn softly to me and say, "You know how she can be. Just let her have it." Even if it felt unfair, I always gave in, simply because I was supposed to be more mature. Because I should have known better. Because they made certain I understood that Megan's feelings took precedence over what was fair. It didn't happen in a single moment. That's the part I wish people could grasp. There wasn't one huge act of betrayal. Instead, it was a gradual, meticulous shaping of a reality where my own needs were always secondary. This pattern emerged early on and remained unchanged. As I matured, it only became more layered and intricate. What started off as disputes over toys and outbursts eventually became expectations and standards that never applied equally to both of us. I wasn't simply the older sibling. I was the cushion, the problem solver, the one expected to absorb it all. Through those small daily acts of giving in, I began to lose myself. I never shouted about it. I didn't lash out, break things, or insist on being acknowledged. Instead, I adapted. I figured out how to navigate Megan's tempers as if she were an inevitable force. I discovered how to withhold words when I was desperate to speak, how to compromise before something escalated, and how to put on a smile even when things didn't go my way. The hardest part was that I truly thought that was a sign of strength. I took that mindset with me as I grew up, letting it influence every decision and shape my sense of value. I believed that if I could maintain peace, silently bear every burden, maybe they'd start to see me in another light. But they never did. By the time I turned 17, that instinct to keep quiet had turned into a rule I lived by. If I wanted anything more than essentials, a cell phone, nicer clothes, any real freedom, I had to be the one to provide it. So I got myself a job on weekends. After that, I picked up after-school shifts. I faced aisles of products, scrubbed tabletops, and rang up customers. I worked hard because I understood that no one would hand me anything otherwise. I figured out early on that it was better not to make requests. But when Megan turned 17, the situation was completely different. She didn't look for work. She didn't even pretend to be concerned about our finances. On her birthday, our father, Gary Martin, presented her with car keys, while our mother, Linda Martin, gave her a credit card. "Just focus on your classes, darling," my mother, Linda Martin, told my younger sister Megan, tucking Megan's hair gently behind her ear in a gesture I'd only ever seen in commercials. "We'll take care of everything else." That was a promise I never once received. We'll take care of it. When it came to college, I searched for and applied to every scholarship available to me. Despite that, I still didn't have quite enough, so I took out loans. I found the most affordable place to rent that I could. It was just a small room. For most dinners, I made do with boxed pasta, and I juggled 2 part-time jobs simply to get by. I felt a kind of exhaustion I couldn't describe, mostly because nobody ever thought to ask. Meanwhile, Megan was accepted at a private university. My mother and father didn't just pay for her tuition, they covered her apartment, groceries, and every utility bill as well. She was set up in a bright, cheerful off-campus apartment with white curtains and a balcony, and she never once had to miss a class because she was scheduled for back-to-back shifts. And the one time I brought it up to my mother, Linda Martin, in a careful way, she answered me quietly and directly. "Megan isn't as tough as you are," she said. "She requires more help." That belief became the backbone of their reasoning, the underlying cause behind every unfair decision. My own hardships were irrelevant to them. What mattered most was their conviction that I could handle anything, and I proved them right. That was exactly what went wrong. When Megan ran out of funds, my parents stepped in to cover it for her. If she crashed her car, they gave her a new one. When she maxed out her credit card buying things she didn't need, my father, Gary Martin, paid it off for her without a second thought. When I was confronted with a frightening, unexpected medical bill, my heart racing, I called home and thought to myself, maybe this time. My mother only sighed and replied, "I wish we could help, honey, but things feel a bit strained these days. You'll figure something out." I always managed to, and they always allowed me to do so. After a while, I gave up on asking, not just for assistance, but for care, for affection, and for any sign that I mattered. I let go of believing I was someone anyone needed to look after, that somehow made life simpler for them. When Luke Connolly proposed to me, I didn't shed a tear. I started to laugh, not because it was unimportant to me, but because I never imagined anyone would choose me so confidently. It happened quietly, just the two of us together on a rainy day. In that instant, I felt as if someone truly noticed me for once. For the first several weeks, I basked in that sense of being valued. Arranging the wedding was so dreamlike, I almost felt as though I had stepped inside another world. It was a world where I could be at the heart of something without feeling ashamed. However, as the day drew near, I sensed a change. At first, it was just a hint. My mother, Linda Martin, began to sigh in that well-rehearsed manner she had perfected over the years. Each time we brought up costs for the catering or the flowers, my mother would incline her head, and her gentle tone would become just perceptibly more measured. "Weddings are so pricey nowadays," she'd remark. "It really is unfortunate to spend so much just for a single day." My mother wasn't attempting to dissuade me from my plans. Instead, she wanted me to feel guilty about being the center of attention. My father, Gary Martin, spoke less often, but his words were just as precise. "We've been making some cutbacks recently," he remarked one night while gazing over his wine glass. "Life isn't quite as simple as before, but we just do our best." Megan Quinn, my younger sister, went through a difficult year. I kept quiet, only giving my usual nod. Yet an odd tightness formed inside me, and Megan didn't bother concealing her reaction. She would roll her eyes whenever the wedding was mentioned, criticize everything in sight, make sarcastic remarks about how silly the bridesmaid dresses looked, and sigh dramatically anytime someone brought up the registry. She even teased me, saying I was acting like royalty when my emotions got the better of me at the cake tasting. Yet, what hurt me the most was the expression Megan wore whenever I was at the center of attention, as if my happiness somehow threatened her, as though my excitement was depriving her of something she felt entitled to. Luke Connolly was the first to pick up on it. One evening, while I was completely immersed in rearranging the seating chart, he stood on the other side of the table with his arms crossed, studying me. His tone remained steady, but there was a sharpness to it I hadn't heard before. He quietly said, "They're going to do something." I glanced over at him. "Who? Your parents?" he simply replied. I shook my head and tried to joke about it. "Luke, don't be ridiculous. Sure, they're self-centered at times, but this is our wedding. They wouldn't sabotage it." He didn't respond immediately, just looked at me without wavering. Then he took his jacket, retrieved a sealed white envelope, and placed it on the table, saying it was just in case. I chose not to ask about its contents. I only glanced at the envelope, and for the first time, I considered whether Luke might have been correct. The day of the wedding dawned unusually calm. It was the kind of stillness that makes me hope, perhaps, everything could actually turn out well. There were no clouds in the sky. The florist showed up ahead of schedule. My gown fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant for me. For the first time in a long while, I permitted myself to believe I could have something truly lovely. My mother met me with a gentle smile and a mug of tea, as though this was our normal routine. She stroked my hair in the same gentle way she used to when I was 6. "You look beautiful," my mother said softly. "Really?" Even Megan refrained herself. She didn't give me any eye rolls, didn't let out a sigh. She almost didn't speak at all. Sponsor. "I'm sorry. I cannot provide assistance with that request. It seems to be incomplete. Can you please provide the entire query?" I considered that to be a step forward. Our wedding felt gentle, with heartfelt promises exchanged in hushed tones and tearful eyes shining in the glow. The atmosphere brimmed with the scent of roses, the fizz of champagne, and a silent acceptance I hadn't realized I craved. My mother, Linda Martin, applauded as the toasts were made. My father, Gary Martin, shared a dance with me. Megan, my younger sister, lingered beside the window and didn't object when the volume rose. It turned out to be everything I never knew I needed. In that instant, I was more than simply accepted. I was truly noticed. And then I saw the card. On my way to the aisle, I discovered it hidden in my bouquet. A petite ivory envelope with my name penned in my mother's handwriting. There was a brief note inside. "No matter what happens today, you remain our daughter, and we love you. Mom." Though the words were unspecific and to the point, they unexpectedly opened up something inside me. For a brief while, I wondered if, perhaps, she finally saw me, not simply as Megan's sister or as the dependable one who never needed anything, but as myself. So as the music filled the air and the space whirled with the presence of those I cared about, I allowed myself to sink into the fantasy. My grin was so wide that my face began to ache. I kept dancing until my feet were sore. I gripped Luke Connolly's hand as if it were my anchor. I reassured myself that my worries had been unfounded. Surely they must have changed. No one could pretend so convincingly just to destroy everything afterward. It was right after our first dance when it happened. The band had paused for a moment. Chatter and the gentle clinking of glasses filled the quieter room. Still flushed and a bit breathless from moving across the floor with Luke under the twinkling lights, I remained basking in the afterglow. That was the moment when my mother, Linda Martin, placed a hand on my arm. Her smile was unnaturally bright, the kind that carried too much force behind it. The expression on her face warned me she was about to bring up a topic I probably wouldn't approve of, but might tolerate regardless. "Come with me for a minute," she requested, her voice tender and her touch light. I walked beside her to a quiet spot near the bar, secluded from the party, where the candlelight grew dim. She wrapped her hands around mine and gave a gentle squeeze, as if she was about to reveal something wonderful. "You look absolutely radiant," she whispered, her tone soft. "It truly is a beautiful night." I remained silent, sensing that her pause was intentional rather than spontaneous. Leaning closer so others wouldn't overhear, her voice lowered even further. "We're going to keep your gift money. Megan needs it more than you," she confided. I was left speechless for a few seconds. I wondered if perhaps I had misheard her, that her words had a different, harmless meaning. But as she maintained that gracious glimmer, as if bestowing a favor upon me, I realized I had understood her perfectly. Precisely so. I eventually apologized and asked my question. She exhaled, as if answering me took effort on her part. "Honey, you don't really need it," my mother told me. You have Luke now. The two of you are starting your future. Megan is having a hard time, and she deserves a hand. My fingertips felt numb. The background noise from the reception faded into a soft, indistinct hum behind me. I still had Megan's fingers in mine, resenting that I hadn't let go already. That money wasn't yours to use, I told her. My words sounded quiet and emotionless. My mother just blinked a single time. Her smile remained, but something behind it became strained. "We're your parents," she replied, as if that clarified the situation. "Here, we take care of family." That was when everything became clear to me. This wasn't due to confusion. It wasn't a momentary lapse or brief misjudgment. She truly believed it, that I was something to be drawn from, that Megan's needs would always, always come before mine. And even at this event, even on my own wedding day, my happiness, my party, my occasion, my mother still wanted me to give it up, the way I always had. I was unaware that he was standing behind me until his voice reached my ears. It was soft and steady, but there was something about it that made everything go silent. "Good thing we thought ahead," Luke said. I turned around. He looked composed, his hands comfortably in his pockets, his gaze unwavering on my mother. He wasn't upset, and he didn't seem shocked, just prepared. Her smile wavered almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" I inquired, still clutching my smile as if it could protect me. Luke held off on responding. Instead, he slipped his hand into his blazer and took out the envelope. It was the one he had handed me 1 month ago, the same envelope I still hadn't looked inside. Holding it with 2 fingers, he extended it to me as if presenting a gift. "Go on," he encouraged. "Take a look inside." Gary Martin had joined us at this point. He stood just behind my mother, his arms folded and his jaw clenched. My father's eyes narrowed at Luke Connolly, carefully assessing him, though he remained silent. My mother paused, then accepted the envelope with deliberate composure. She slid a fingernail under the flap and revealed a stack of documents. I watched as she looked over the first sheet. There were no tremors in her hands. Not yet. Still, I noticed how her expression froze. Her mouth drew tight, and her breath hitched partway through the second paragraph. Gary leaned closer to glance over my shoulder. I saw lines appear on his forehead. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked. Luke's tone stayed calm and low, not bothering to get louder. "It's a notarized legal statement," he explained, "signed 1 month ago. The document spells out that every wedding present, whether money or otherwise, is legally the property belonging to me and Kate Hammond." My mother's eyes flickered. Luke Connolly went on. "Any effort to retain, reroute, or tap into that money without our permission counts as theft and will be dealt with legally." The hush that followed felt suffocating. My mother turned to face me, and her look held no affection, none of that mild, patronizing air, but a hint of something new in her features. Hesitation. "You wouldn't really take us to court," she whispered. "We're still family." Luke gave a restrained, deliberate smile. "He absolutely would," he said, and I knew he meant it. His posture didn't show defiance or outrage. It was rock solid and unyielding. He had marked a boundary, and he was determined to keep it intact. Gary Martin opened his mouth as if to answer, but then just shut it again. I kept quiet. There was no reason for me to jump in. For a change, I wasn't the one justifying, mediating, or cushioning the truth. All I did was stand at Luke's side and let them absorb a truth they never anticipated: that their behavior had crossed a line, and someone was finally setting a boundary. The quiet didn't linger. My younger sister moved closer, her shoes striking the floor with an exaggerated sharpness. My cheeks were burning, my lips set, and my eyes wide with stunned disbelief. I glanced from the envelope in my mother's grasp to the blank look on Luke's face. Then I snapped. "This isn't right," I cried out, my words as jagged as broken glass. "You're married now, Kate. You have no reason for that money anymore. You've got a husband, a future, everything, and meanwhile, I'm left with nothing." Each word came faster, her voice climbing even higher with desperation. I was barely making it, and none of that mattered to me. I stayed silent. My eyes followed her. For the very first time, I didn't feel upset. I wasn't surprised either. I just felt a kind of chill. Because at that point, when she struck me, I knew she was serious. She wasn't just reacting in anger. She wasn't trying to manipulate the situation. She wasn't having a fit to bend things to her will. Deep down, Megan truly believed she deserved whatever I possessed. My money, my moments, anything she lacked, because that's how life had always worked for her. Whether her suffering was real or just perceived, it always outweighed any boundaries I set. Her problems, regardless of whether she brought them upon herself, always took precedence over my own sense of safety. I had wasted years wishing Megan would eventually outgrow this behavior. I had held on to the hope that someday she'd wake up and realize she wasn't at the heart of everything, that she'd stop demanding, that she'd finally figure out how to handle her own responsibilities. But standing there now, watching my younger sister's shoulders shake, her hands balled into fists, and tears running down her cheeks, as if she were a little girl denied a treat, the reality hit me. Megan was never going to change, and I was finished holding out for her. My father lunged forward so suddenly that it caught even my mother off guard. His cheeks flushed, his jaw clenched, and his stare was as cold as granite. For a second, it seemed he might erupt, but not from simple rage. Something else, deeply hurt. "I've never felt so much disgrace because of you," he hissed. I remained perfectly still. I didn't react, didn't give in, and didn't avert my gaze. I held his gaze levelly, calm and unafraid for the first time ever, allowing his accusation to drift between us like smoke that no longer suffocated me. The guilt he tried to place on me just didn't belong to me anymore. Although I kept quiet, the silence between us spoke volumes. "You can't condemn the daughter you refuse to protect." Luke Connolly moved in just a little, his words quiet but cutting, as if the blade didn't have to actually be drawn to draw blood. "Should you attempt to take even a trace from us," he stated, "we'll see you in court." There was no harshness or rage in his tone, only unwavering confidence. That was exactly why his words had such impact on me. My mother's lips parted as though she was about to respond, but she remained silent. My younger sister released a sound of exasperation behind me, yet nobody paid her any mind now. Even Gary stayed silent, because for the first time, they realized the terms had shifted. There would be no begging, no concessions, no appeals to conscience or the countless subtle ways they had conditioned me to surrender. All that remained was a daughter who no longer required their consent, a husband who refused to waver, and a boundary they would never cross again. Without speaking, we turned and left. The music behind us swelled again, the sound of strings and gentle laughter, attempting to fill the space that had been torn open. Yet for me, the corridor seemed muffled, as if even the air realized something fundamental had changed. Luke's hand rested reassuringly in mine, solid and unwavering. With each footstep, I felt my posture grow taller. I kept my gaze ahead, not looking back. That changed only when fingers suddenly encircled my wrist. The touch was unmistakable to me, firm, yet shaking. My mother, Linda Martin, spoke my name so quietly it was barely audible. I faced her. Almost nothing about her seemed familiar anymore. Her eyes were round with shock, her poise utterly vanished. The careful elegance she had maintained for so many years lay in ruins. Before me was only a woman coming apart. "You can't mean this," she murmured. "We're the people who love you." I hesitated to respond, allowing quiet to settle between us for maybe the first time. I let my mother bear the silence, to feel the heaviness her words carried, and the emptiness beneath them. I stayed quiet so she could confront the reality for herself. She had never wanted to witness what came next. Then I spoke, not raising my voice, not harsh, just firm. "You were never my family," I said, as I cocked my head to the side. "You were Megan." Her expression froze, as if my words had slapped her. Her hand fell from my wrist, as if she'd touched something scalding. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The collapse was silent. It barely made a sound, barely visible, yet I noticed every detail. I caught how her shoulders sagged. I noticed her fingers move, as though reaching for something already lost. I saw her glance at my husband, no longer furious, but stunned. She had never pictured this outcome. Not ever. She always believed I'd come back, that no matter what they stole from me, I'd someday return. But this time, I didn't leave quietly. I left with everything. I had created this life entirely on my own, and I refused to leave even a sliver of possibility for return. Step by step, breath by breath, we continued walking further from those who once claimed to be my family. Faint sounds from the reception drifted to us. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, distant music. It provided the backdrop for a day that now belonged to someone else. It was no longer ours. That's when I heard something. There were fast footsteps scraping against the floor. A hurried, uneven breath carried a desperate whisper. "Kate, please." It was my mother again, her voice reaching out for me, more frantic than before. I kept my face forward. Not far behind her, Megan's voice rose until it broke into a screech. She yelled about how I was ruining everything, about how she deserved more, about how I had taken attention away from her. Then I heard my father, his voice low and seething, muttering curses as if he didn't care who heard, less interested in hiding his fury than in preserving what little dignity he thought remained. It all hit me at once. The pleading, the indignation, the rage. Another storm, just like before, ready to erupt. The difference was, this time I was on the outside looking in. I refused to look back, not when my mother's voice broke, not during my younger sister's anger, not when my father was sharp and resentful, because none of it was directed at me. Their words were aimed at another version of myself, one they had constructed. The apologetic, self-denying, ever-present daughter. But that person no longer existed. That young woman who'd spent her life waiting to be seen, praying to be picked, she had finally chosen herself instead. Luke Connolly gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Steady, real, right beside me. And honestly, that was enough. I kept moving forward. I walked past their accusations, past all the debris, beyond the endless years I had spent pleading for the tiniest bit of love. I didn't need to have the last word. I had no hunger for payback. I realized I wasn't even searching for closure anymore. Sometimes what really ends things isn't a showdown, but a silence so total it leaves everything in the past. In that stillness, I discovered a part of myself. This is the final chapter. Nothing comes after this. No arguments, no getting even. Simply a woman who made the decision to leave for good.